Teacher asking, how many people in here are going to be a millionaire when they grow up? Just about everybody in whole class raised their hand. Because when you're small, you think that you are going to be a millionaire. Because we live in the land of opportunity, and if you work hard, you can become a millionaire. Well, everybody thought that. But then the teacher says, which was crushing to me, the teacher says, well, the reality of it is none of you guys are going to become a millionaire.
Oh, God.
I know. This was grade school, and this teacher crushed our dreams. A whole,
Everybody's like all happy. I'm going to be a
28
millionaire.
kids in a class, and she just crushed all our dreams.
They're all like, what the heck? Well, I don't want to be here anymore.
Exactly. Why go to school?
Right, exactly.
We were born before the wind, also younger than the sun. Yeah, the Malibu was one, sailed into the misty. Hot now, hear the sailors cry, smell the sea and feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly into the misty. When that foghorn blows, I'll be coming home. When that foghorn whistle blows, gonna hear it, don't have to fear it. Just like way back in the days of old, and together we will blow into the misty. When that foghorn blows, I'll be coming home. Wow. When that foghorn whistle blows, I'm gonna hear it, don't have to fear it. No, get a record gypsy soul, just like way back in the days of old. And together we will flow into the misty.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Dan McGee. Welcome to my garage. Today we have two special guests, one off camera and one on camera. We have Alex Rathje and Mary McGee. Well, you'll hear her voice in the background every once in a while. Now let's talk about where you grew up and the difference in relationship between the time frame that you grew up versus the time frame that I grew up. So I grew up where you were dating in the 1970s, and you would have started dating what year?
Oh, mid-2000s probably.
Okay.
Roughly.
So that's
I'd say
like 2000.
2008, 9, 2010, somewhere in there.
Okay. All right. And you grew up in Cedar Rapids?
Yep.
Okay, so you're from Ohio.
No.
Iowa. You're from Iowa. You know, they both have O's.
Yeah.
You're from Iowa, and we're from the Chicago area. So when we were growing up around this area, my town that we grew up in was a small town, but it had a lot of towns around us. But our actual town only had about 13,000 people. And the majority of the people that we grew up with ended up marrying within our group. Very few of us went out of our town and married, you know, from another area.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. And you're from Iowa, and you're going out with Katie McGee. So already it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So, all right, tell me a little about being in relationships in well, how big is it, this town you were in, or small city, or?
Cedar Rapids, about 140,000 people is what it's got. Growing up, before we moved to Cedar Rapids until I was 7, we lived in a town called Springville, and that town had probably at max 5,000 people. It's a little bigger now, but it's still a really small town. So it was a big transition going from a town of 5,000 people to a city of 140,000 people.
That was Iowa also?
Yeah. It's about 20 minutes east of Cedar Rapids.
Okay. Did your family move there because of the business, the family business?
No, because we lived in a little bit of a smaller house and it was just me. And then my twin sisters were born, and then we decided that they wanted to upgrade, get a little bigger house, and my mom got a newer job. So it kind of all made sense to move into Cedar Rapids. And
so you're in like a suburban part of Cedar
Yeah.
Rapids, right?
Yeah.
There's like, you're not in like any really big tall building apartments
No.
or nothing like that.
yeah, Cedar Rapids, if you're not in downtown Cedar Rapids, it's all strictly suburbs. Downtown is where a lot of the like high-rise apartments are, but it's all suburban outside of that.
Right. I mean, that's kind of what around here. Like
Yeah.
we've got all these small towns that join together, but until you get into the city of Chicago, you don't get the big high rises and the big money rents like they do.
Yeah, and I honestly preferred a smaller town. I wish we had stayed where we were. Once you go from a town of 5,000, you could say that your high school maybe isn't, you're not going to get what you'd get out of like a bigger high school like where I went, from going from a high school that maybe has 100 people in it to a high school that has 3,000 people in. The resources at your disposal are a little different.
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
a little better at a bigger high school. But I always preferred a smaller town.
Okay, now I interrupted you. Did you date in high school, or what? I know you said earlier today that you didn't call it dating.
No.
What did you? What was the terminology?
And it still is called, everything is called a thing now. Everyone has a thing, and they're talking. They've been talking for 2 months. They've been a thing for 6 months. No one dates anymore.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
I think it's starting to go back, but I don't know what's so hard about just calling it dating. I mean, we've been talking for 3 months, well, it kind of sounds like you've been dating to me.
You got to think. Well, you know what blows my mind, and this when we were growing up. The term hookup was not about fooling around with somebody. It was, I'm hooking up with the guys tonight. We're going out to the bar, or we're hooking up with these girls and we're going dancing, which I never did. But the point is, the terminology didn't mean, having sex with somebody.
Yeah.
Which now, from what I understand, that's what it means, right?
That's exactly what it means now. And I'd even tell people, then when you would talk to someone, they say, oh, I'm talking to someone. Well, I say, well, I'm talking to him right now. We're not dating. I'm talking to him. We're not dating.
Right.
I mean, I don't know why you can't just say you're dating anymore, but it really hasn't been like that for a while. And I don't know.
So
why
in
that
your
is.
whole lifetime, has hooking up always meant that?
Yeah.
So I was just curious of when that term changed from simple meeting up to fooling around with someone.
Yeah, and then the apps came along. The apps like Tinder and Bumble were just hookup fueled apps. That's their strict purpose. They aren't dating apps, which, lo and behold, that's how me and Katie met, and we've had an outstanding.
Through an app?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I thought you were at a party or something.
We actually met through the Tinder app and started talking and then started hanging out, and then 3 years later we're still dating.
Now, what story did you hear?
That's it.
I'm pointing at Mary.
That's the story, but
What's the
what
story?
Alex doesn't know is Katie's Katie's side of it. So Katie had gone to a fraternity party, and Alex was at this fraternity party with his friends. And Katie saw him, never talked to him, but she saw him and she liked him. And I don't know, whatever, the party ended, whatever, the next day, whatever. So she liked him. She didn't even know your name, I don't think.
No.
And she just went on some of these apps to see if, you know, I don't know if she specifically was looking for you or if she was just scrolling through the apps and she recognized him from the party. And she was like, she wanted to reach out and see if she can get in touch with him because, you know, she liked the way he looked.
I could say that actually the one thing that stuck out to her the most was when I had my long hair.
Yeah. Because I know she kept telling me, yeah, I found this guy, he's got this nice long hair. I like long hair. But yeah, so I knew that, you know, she reached out through Tinder.
Yeah.
And then they talked for a while on Tinder, right? You didn't meet up right away.
Yeah, I mean, and she even said she was hesitant because you never know in the world we live in today, like, who are you really talking to through the app, and when those apps are strictly just hookup related apps, I mean, you're always hesitant, but I was actually able to get her to hang out with me, and then that's when it started the whole process of us hanging out, and then it took only about a month, and then we officially stated that we were dating.
Oh.
But you didn't call it dating.
Well, I actually technically told people that we were dating before we actually said we were dating.
Okay, because I know Katie.
I kind of just took a
granted.
huge swing, hoping that it was going to work out.
Because I know Katie, you know, when she said that, you know, she met, I don't know, she said guy or boy or whatever. I said, "Oh, are you guys dating?" And she's like, "Nobody dates anymore. You know, that's not what you do." And I'm like, "Well, what do you do then?" And I don't even know what she told me at the time. But I mean, that was the thing, is that don't call it dating because we're not dating.
Yeah, and it really surprises people, especially when you say we start talking on Tinder, because goes completely against what the app's for. The app's it's what college students live on. They live on that app to find their hook up with people that are in the area, but that's really what college dating life is through those apps. I mean, that's
so funny.
That's dating life. That's their versions of relationships, is their quick hookups and done.
Right. Now, when we were growing up, because we didn't really go to college, like away to college. Most of our friends, if they even went to college at all, they went to the community college. So you never left the area.
Yeah.
You know, you would take some classes and you would still be living at home. But just about all our friends were married and divorced by the time they were like 25, 26. There was only a few of our friends that got married later in life that are still married to the same person they married when they were in their, you know, early 20s.
Yeah.
So, but you know, when we were looking for dates, it was strictly parties, or we would go to like a roller rink.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There were discos and things like that, because this was still in the 70s and discos were still there. But in our particular group, you had to be 21 to go in there, and some of them had fake IDs.
Yeah.
But the majority of our group hung out at parties, not bars, because it was just cheaper.
Yeah.
So.
And you actually hung out with the other person and actually, you know, talk to them. That's the one thing that's changed it all is
Right.
technology, social
Right.
media apps. I mean, it's like I'll talk to this person. If it doesn't work out, well, I'll just get on and find another person to talk to, and that's really all it is anymore.
I met Mary in front of my friend's house. It was a group of people that came together. It was normally a group of guys, and I had a van, so I had the van where the guys would crawl in there, and then we would go to where the girls are, or the girls would be in a car, and they would come to where we were. But there was rarely, like, at the beginning of the night, couples didn't come together. You know what I mean? It was just a group of singles, and then hopefully by the end of the night, you found someone to talk to.
Sounds like a movie scene almost. Sounds like Animal House a little bit.
Yeah.
Where they're partying and they just show up in the cars and everything.
Right. It was a fun time. I wouldn't trade it. Look what I got.
Yeah, that's, I would say now that people are getting married at a younger age, again, not super young. I know a lot of people now that have gotten married in the last year or two, and they're 22, 23. I know some that are actually had their first kid, some are expecting their second kid. So
high school or work people?
Some of them are high school sweethearts. Some of them have been dating since even middle school. But yeah, 23, 24-year-old, they have a house, they're married. Some have 2 kids. So
wow. Yeah, that's you don't see you don't find that around here anymore.
no.
And again, it's the time in the 1970s. It was the late 70s, early 80s, so wasn't the early 70s. But I don't know. There was only 1 or 2 of our friends that even had an apartment. And if they had an apartment, it was just a junk. It was like the worst apartment you could have. And they just wanted to be on their own and have parties.
Yeah.
And then we would go over there, and it was just, it was not good. We had more fun out in the street in front of her mom and dad's house in Bridgeview. We would meet there, and it would start out with just a couple cars, and by the end of the night there might be 6-8 cars of people. So it was a dead end street.
Yeah.
So the cops would rarely come by and bother us. I don't think they ever did they?
A few times. But it was usually late.
But the bottom line is, it was a dead end. They could only come from one direction. And, if you seen a cop, you'd hide the beer.
Yeah.
You know
but
what
you
I
could
mean?
see him coming on
Right.
a dead end street.
Because there was only one way they would come in. And nobody really made a lot of, hardly ever, they made a lot of noise where the neighbors would call the police. So it was a nice little setup. I mean, it was almost like my friend Greg. He grew up in Bridgeview until he was, I think he was like 14 or 15. Then he moved to a town called Marengo. And Marengo is a farm town, but they had, I don't even think they had like a Walmart. You know what I mean?
Is it Marengo, Illinois, or
Yeah.
Iowa? Because
No.
there is a Marengo, Iowa.
Yeah, this was Marengo, Illinois. Well, they moved out when he was in high school, and I visited him before I could even drive. My brother actually took me out there. It's about 50, 60 minutes from Chicago, from the Chicago area, Bridgeview. And he would drop me off, and I would stay there for like a long weekend.
Yeah.
And out there, because it was like I said, it's like a farming community. It was like you see on the country western. They would meet in the farm fields and have these big bonfires.
The field parties, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was that. So I thought that was the coolest thing, that they would have these big get-togethers. But turns out we had the same thing, but in the suburbs.
Yeah.
But we didn't have big fires.
Those are still, I know people that come from really small towns that probably have barely 1,000 people in them, that actually still do they'll have their big field bonfire parties and stuff like that. But that's rural Iowa, really, really small town Iowa. Like if you drove through, you'd drive through the whole town in about 15 seconds and then you were out of it. But
But the actual area was big. It was the actual town was real small.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And like you said, the times, I mean, a lot of people, with what happened over the last year and a half, a lot of people are moving back home and not buying houses. I mean, I know that the housing market's great, but people aren't buying houses and moving into houses and getting married. A lot of people are moving closer to home, or they're just moving back home in general. So
right.
aren't getting married and starting families like
Right.
at a younger age.
Mary and I had an apartment for less than a year, I think.
6 months.
Yeah, about 6 months. And then we decided apartment life wasn't for us. We wanted to buy a house. So we moved in to Mary's mom and dad's house, and they charged us minimal rent, and we got to live there, and we got to save our money.
Yeah.
But it turns out all that rent money we paid them, they gave us back for our down payment. But they didn't tell us that, right?
Right. Yeah, we didn't know until after we were moving out. My mom said, here's all the rent money you've paid. I've just been saving it. And so,
So that was pretty awesome.
That is, because if you get an apartment now and you do your deposit, you're probably not going to see your deposit back, no matter if you keep it. I'm hoping to get our deposit back, but they do everything in their power to make sure you don't get it back.
Oh, that never changed. They did that to us.
Now, there's a 0% chance pretty much as soon as you hand that deposit check over. That's the last time you're going to ever see it.
Yeah, it's just part of the deal.
I would love to have a house. I mean, if it required me, which we did spend some time living with my parents and commuting. She'd commute to work, and I would hitch a ride with my dad to go to work. And if we weren't paying for the apartment at the same time, it would have saved us a lot of money. And I know if we did it again, like if we lived with you guys or went back to my house, no one wants to do that. People, once you get at 17, 18, even before then, you want to get out of your house. You want to go off and try your own things. But at the same time, I'd like to do cheapest possible living that's affordable, because I really would like to buy me and Katie a house and move into a house. I would love to own my own house.
Right. Yeah, no, it's really hard to buy a house nowadays.
Yeah.
Especially for college students with their student debt is to the ceiling.
Yeah.
So now you get out of college, and if there's two of you that went, you could owe way over $200,000.
Yeah.
And that's basically a house.
Yeah, you
got to pay for your college, which is basically a house, before you could even buy a house.
Yeah. And you're paying that, however much it is, $100,000, $200,000 over the course of the next 15, 20, 25 years. That's drawing more interest, and by the time it's all said and done, it's probably more $250,000, $300,000. But
right,
it is crazy, and that is one of the major burdens. That if that wasn't as much of an issue, I think that would change things completely.
Now, when we were growing up, this would have been again in the 70s. It was like 90% of state colleges were funded by the state. So that means that you could go to college for a couple grand a year. For like a whole year of college,
Yeah.
it costs you a couple grand. Now, college is funded about 8%.
Yeah, that scale is
Yeah,
completely
it
flipped now.
Flipped, right. So when people argue, well, I went to work and I paid for my college. Yeah, but you didn't pay 92% of it. You only paid 8%.
Yeah.
The students nowadays are paying 98% of the cost.
Yeah. And
Or 92% of the cost.
And me and Mary were actually talking about this the other day, how it's getting to the point where the cost of college and the value you're going to probably get out of your college degree, the bars are starting to come together. Almost where it's the value of getting the degree is almost not outweighing the debt. The debt, as the debt continues to rise, it's not, and it's going to keep going that way, but it's not good when you're automatically set up in your early to mid 20s with $50,000 to $75,000 in debt.
No,
well,
that's crazy.
You're set up for. I mean, it's setting up the younger generation for failure, because they will never get out on their own. Just as you had said, I want to go and buy a house. You won't ever be able to do that when you're, whatever 24-year-old, college graduate with that much debt. I mean, and like you said, and then you're going to carry that debt for a good, 10, 15 years. So, you're 25 now, so, 15 years, 40 years before you get your debt paid off. You're 40 years old before you get your debt paid off. That, you needed in order to, obtain reasonable employment.
So we bought our house in what year? 89?
88.
88?
I think 88.
Okay, so
88 or 89.
yeah,
It might
anyways,
have been 89.
Anyways, we'll say 88. So I was, 28?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was 28 when we were able to afford our house, living with her parents for what?
3 years, I think.
All right, whatever it is, 3 or 4 years. So, that was kind of amazing. I mean, I don't know if you guys could even do that.
Me personally,
You would have to get a really good job in order to save up that money to do that.
Because the cost of homes went up,
Right, exactly.
so you have to save up more to have the down payment, to have, a reasonable mortgage payment. You know what I mean? Everything's like snowballed up.
yeah, I could do it. I live on the tightest possible budget I can possibly live in, and if I had to do it for 3 years, if I had to live in my car, whatever it took to save up money to do what I want to do, I'm strictly just focused on trying to get to where I want to be. And if that means living at home for a few years, if that means strapping yourself, that's...
I mean, ideally, that's the new normal now.
Yeah.
In order to get, so you don't have to rent and give your money away, you have to do that. You have to go back home and save your money to buy that house.
Yeah.
And hopefully, in that time, you pay off a lot of your loan too. And again, that makes, if you're just sitting on your butt, and you're not doing anything with your degree, then you're never going to get out of debt, and you're never going to leave your mom and dad's home.
Yeah.
Well, and that's...
You've got to take that degree and get that good job, and then hold back and say, yeah, I know I'm making $2,000 a week now, but I also have a $100,000 loan, so I'm not going to rush into taking on another $250,000, $300,000 loan to buy a house. Let's pay for that first, and then do it.
Yeah, and your expenses are at minimal, especially if you're living at home. Your expenses have been cut down to almost nothing. So if you're making your $2,000 a week, you save up. In 3 or 4 years, you can pay off a lot of that debt.
Exactly.
It's manageable.
But you can't get out of college and get a job at McDonald's.
No.
You've got to use that degree, and make the good money. Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Well, and that's what I was going to say is, I mean, to the point earlier, you can't have an apartment and pay rent, pay student loans, save for college, and pay your student loans. I mean, there's just not enough money in a paycheck to do all of those things at once. That's why it's unrealistic that, you can do some of it. So if you choose, okay, I'm not going to live at home, I'm going to pay rent and pay maybe my student loan, or but then you're not going to save for a house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just, the money isn't. There's a limit to the money that you're making, so there's a limit to the money that you can spend.
If you're renting, then you're automatically giving half your money away.
Yeah.
So you can't save it
for something that you don't own any of.
You won't have any ownership whatsoever.
Yeah, you're not gaining any equity in it or anything like that.
That's why, you the new way of doing it, you have to do that. You have to move in with somebody and make do minimal rent or no rent at all, and not buy the fancy stuff. Actually pay that loan off so you can move out and get that home.
Yeah, and unfortunately now you're faced with two choices. I move home, save up my money, all that, this and that, try to be financially smart, or I'll take on more debt, and we are trending towards the side where people are just saying, I'll just take on more debt, I got a lot of debt, I'll just take on the debt, I'll just get a house. It sucks that there has to be two sides like that.
It's almost like the national debt, in the fact that the numbers are so big that they're not even real anymore.
Yeah.
You can't even fathom what that even means. You know what I mean? A $3 trillion debt. No one even knows what that even means.
No.
It's a lot of money. We know that, but we don't know what that really means.
Yeah, and that it all comes around to affecting relationships and all that. And
Absolutely.
we're society, and then with the pandemic thrown into the mix now, that's just another freaking wrench that you threw in there. But it's I think that's why it is the way it is, where people aren't getting married, going out and buying a house like they may have 15, 20, 25 years ago. I hope it changes, but I don't see that being that way, because that's just not how it is right now.
Right.
But to your point about how that affects relationships is a good one, because it shows that these are things that need to be discussed
Yeah.
between the people in the relationship. You have to make sure that both people in the relationship are on the same page. You can't have one saying, oh no, I definitely want to be on my own. I'd rather pay rent money than, live with somebody. And the other person is you and saying, well, I'd be fine living in my car for a couple of years as long as I can pay all my debt off and then, save for a house. You can't have two people in a relationship on opposite ends, because it will never work.
And it puts stress on the couple as a whole. I mean, it's just added stress that, unfortunately, when you go to college or high school, they're not going to sit down with you and say, hey, there's 100 of you in here, probably 5, 10 of you are going to have no debt. The rest of you are going to have at least 40,000 plus a debt 4 years from now. And this is going to be they don't sit down and tell you those things. They don't tell you these are the things you're going to have to worry about. You go through school and all that, and then you get out of it, and basically you have all these things in your lap now.
I remember a teacher in grade school. Keep in mind, this is not even high school. This is grade school. How many people in here, teacher asking, how many people in here are going to be a millionaire when they grow up? Just about everybody in whole class raised their hand. Because when you're small, you think that you are going to be a millionaire. Because we live in the land of opportunity, and if you work hard, you can become a millionaire. Well, everybody thought that. But then the teacher says, which was crushing to me, the teacher says, well, the reality of it is none of you guys are going to become a millionaire.
Oh, God.
I know. This was grade school, and this teacher crushed our dreams. A whole,
Everybody's like, oh, happy, I want to be a
28
millionaire.
kids in a class, and she just crushed all our dreams.
They're all like, what the heck? Well, I don't want to be here anymore.
Exactly. Why go to school?
Right, exactly.
Heading up to San Francisco for the Labor Day weekend show. I've got my hush puppies on. Guess I never was meant for glitter rock and roll. Honey, I didn't know that I'd be missing you so. Come Monday, it'll be alright. Come Monday, I'll be holding you tight. I spent 4 lonely days in the brown LA haze, and I just want you back by my side. Yes, it's been quite a summer, rental cars and westbound trains. Now you're off on vacation, something you try to explain. Darling, I love you so, that's the reason I just let you go. Come Monday, it'll be alright. Come Monday, I'll be holding you tight. I spent 4 lonely days in brown LA haze, and I just want you back by my side. I can't help it, honey, there's that much a part of me now. Remember that night in my town, said there'd be no room for doubt. hope you enjoy the scenery. I know it's pretty up there. We'll go hiking on Tuesday. With you I'd walk anywhere. California has worn me quite thin. I can't wait to see you again. Come Monday, it'll be alright. Come Monday, I'll be holding you tight. I spent 4 lonely days in a brown alley haze, and I just want you back by my side. I spent 4 lonely days in a brown alley haze, and I just want you back by my side.
Hey, how you doing? We're back again. We had to take a short break, and Mary was about to tell us about high school, about
Yeah, I was
what
going to
they
make a comment about
yeah. So go ahead and make your comment.
about the cost of school. And it's funny that when you're in high school and you're exploring career opportunities to determine where do you want to go to school, there's at the time when we went to school, everything was in books. I mean, now everything is online, but at the time you had books, or you had to go look it up in the library, and you'd look at the careers out there and all the average pay scales of different occupations. And the funny thing is those average pay scales they specifically say, somebody just out of college, in this field, the average pay is this. But in my experience, I found that is overinflated. And so kids are making decisions on the schooling they want to do based on the information that they're given, and it's not completely accurate. So, you think you're going to start a career at, $70,000 a year, and in reality, it's a career that you might start at $35,000 a year.
Yeah.
So, how do you pay for, again, going back to what we talked earlier, how do you pay for an apartment or a home and a student loan and, all the things that you dream about having when you're planning this career? Sometimes it just isn't real. All the pieces don't match up that you learned along the way. And you don't realize that until you're well into it.
Yeah, and I never understood, still don't understand why they'll teach you everything there is to know about a career you're possibly pursuing, but they don't teach you anything about everything that's happening outside of your career. Everything
Right.
in your life besides the career you're pursuing. None of that's covered. They're more worried about you learning about who built the pyramids and stuff like that, but they don't teach personal finance or anything. A lot of it's all self-taught. Whether
But-
you teach it or your parents teach it.
Well,
or,
a lot of that has to do with your how much money you're growing up with.
yeah.
If you're coming from a family that has a lot of money, well, it's going to be completely different from somebody that's going to college and is, their parents are barely have enough money for them to go there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
More than likely, they're hooked up already. As far as they're gonna graduate and get a good job with their dad, with one of their friends, one of their uncles, because money follows money.
Yeah.
So the majority of the people that have a lot of money in college, they already know what they're going to do. They're
Yeah.
going to graduate and they're going to work for Uncle Ted, and they're going to start out at $120,000 a year.
Yeah.
Where we graduate, we're going to have to start from the beginning, and where that guy's making $120,000, we're going to make 50 or 60.
Yeah.
And it's going to take us 10 years to get to that $120,000.
If
Yeah, if it even happens.
Yeah, and you go 4 or 5, however, you go to grad school, you get your PhD, all that. You go, just say 5 years, and you come out, and then you backtrack 5 years or 4 years. I mean, you go 5 years to go 5 years back. Basically, you start at the bottom, and now those people that are in that kind of situation where they're families maybe don't have as much money are probably better at understanding how their finances work and are better at doing those kinds of things, whereas someone that has more money is going to be, well, I got an issue here. Well, there's a check or there's cash that'll take care of that. I mean, that's...
Right. I mean, our system is based on the wealthy making a lot of money always, and the middle class makes just enough to not, you know, enough to survive, get that big screen TV, get a, you know, a modest house and a couple cars.
Yeah.
That's the middle class. That's the best you could ask for. Very few people start from nothing and become millionaires, but some do. Mary's uncle did that. He became he was a salesman that sold, it's the silliest thing, he sold these little donuts that they used to put between tape so they don't stick together. If you buy a roll, you know, a bunch of tape, they would put like wax paper in between.
Huh.
So that's what he sold. He sold things like that. Well, it turns out the company he worked for, he was able to buy a machine that made those little donuts. So now he was able to sell those donuts directly to the customers.
Yeah.
And that one little thing turned into this 100+ person company, and he became a millionaire because of that. But you know, those are few and far between.
Yeah, and he I mean,
And they have to work.
I was
Oh yeah,
gonna
no,
say,
they worked his whole life.
A rich person's on step. If you come from you don't even have to be a millionaire. If your family's well off, you're on step 9 out of 10 when you come out.
Oh,
the
yeah.
person that's starting, like your uncle, they're on step 0.5 out of 10. I mean, and they're
Exactly. They're
fighting and
starting
clawing
not even with
every
one.
single way,
Yeah.
all the way to the top.
Right. So, and that's what I was going to say, is it's not like he started this company and then he's on Easy Street and he just collected the profits. No.
No, it took
He
many,
went
many
to work,
years.
and he went to work every day, even after he was a millionaire.
In
he
fact,
worked
he-
every
in
day.
fact,
He ran the company.
He had to take on a partner to fund the business. Because he didn't come from any money
No.
at all.
Yeah.
But his partner was able to get money. So he had this partner for many, many years that funded the beginning of the business.
and then eventually bought him out.
Yeah, he ended up buying him out at the end of the business, but you know, he ended up dying, and now his kids are running the business. And they're running it good, which is really good, because a lot of people that
doesn't happen.
no, they get handed a business and then they just, you know, they take it for granted. And
Well, luckily, I mean, and you know this, of course, I mean, his daughter went to, you know, grew up, obviously, you know, probably worked summers or weekends in the business.
yeah, always they worked all through high school and college and everything at the business.
And, you know, went to school. I want to say she got an accounting degree. I think that's what her degree is in.
Who are you talking about?
Bonnie.
Yeah, I'm most positive
Yeah.
she got accounting.
And so after she graduated, she went to school and she worked in the accounting department. She was the one, like, you know, granted, she didn't start as, like, you know, the mail clerk. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to say she was like the accounting manager, you know what I mean? But
But she knew her stuff.
She knew the
because
business in and
her
out.
dad was tough.
yeah,
If you didn't know your stuff,
he'd call you out.
yeah, he would call you out. Because his son worked for him, and he wouldn't tolerate his son doing stupid things.
Right.
Which is how it should be, especially if you're like family and you're brought up into that and you're
Right.
around that. You should. If you don't, that's how it should be.
Right. And so his daughter, you know, worked, we'll just call it the accounting manager position or whatever, for so many years up until he passed away. And so, you know, as you know, that's a very valuable position because you know the state of the business, because you know the books.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's running the company, and then his other daughter's husband, for years after he got out of college, he hired him as a salesman.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Danny, right? His name's
Dan.
Dan?
Mhm.
Yeah. His name is Dan, and if you ever met him, he's an awesome guy, and he's got the same personality as
My uncle.
as her uncle.
Right. Very personable and likable.
So they, he knew right away, not I don't know right away, but he knew that that son-in-law is going to be really, instrumental in that company.
Yeah.
And he let him, take over accounts and, you know what I mean? And by the time he ended up passing away,
it was in
it was
good hands.
basically, he was doing what Mike, his name was Mike, by the way. When Mike passed away, basically Dan and Bonnie were running the business
already.
Right. Yeah, they already had their hands on the controls. So again, we don't talk to them a lot. So I'm sure there was, there were hard times that we don't know about. But the bottom line is, last we heard, they're doing fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how many years now?
Yeah, it's
at least 5, right?
Oh yeah, probably closer to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and the example is the fact that, here you have a guy who basically came from nothing, saw an opportunity, took the risk, and it paid off. He's the one, he's the one in the classroom that raised his hand to be, I'm going to be a millionaire.
And the teacher was wrong.
And the teacher was wrong.
And anyway, so basically I wanted to tell that story because that could be you.
Right.
I didn't want, that whole thing about everybody in the classroom was devastated.
Yeah.
Because you might be
the next
Uncle
Mike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're a hard worker and you've got a good personality, which you do, you could be the next guy.
Yeah.
But it ain't going to be handed to you.
No, and you're at the longest of the longest odds, no matter how hard you have to work, and you already have to work 10 times harder and then work 10 times harder on top of that. But
and sometimes it's, like Dan said, it seemed like the silliest thing to say, okay, I'm selling these things, I can buy this machine and take it directly to customers and make money for myself, you know what I mean? And then I'm not going to be at the mercy of someone else.
And he was doing that part-time. You know what I mean? He was still working for that company, but he had this business on the side building the products. So he had 2 jobs up until he didn't have 2 jobs. And then he was able to,
he got the funding.
Business.
Yeah, he got the funding through a partner, and was able to build from there. And then I want to say, he built multiple manufacturer
processes.
Yeah, and buildings. Over the years.
He
grew.
He had big buildings. Like we had one machine that they called it the laminator, and there would be like 6 or 8 foot rolls of plastic, and like when you go to buy furniture, this was in the, they do it a little different now, but for a long time you had vinyl and they were glued on to a piece of wood. Okay, now they do a different one. They do melamine and all kinds of other stuff. But anyhow, his machine took this raw vinyl that had like a wood grain on it, and he would send it through this big machine, and it would put the glue on it, which sounds like not a big thing, but there's like big money, because then he would take that raw material, glue it up, put backing on it, and sell it to manufacturers who made, tens of thousands of cabinets and all that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he had this product that he was able to sell, and he would probably make, again I'm just guessing, because it's raw product, he would probably make 10 times what he's paying for the process. But what's interesting about that machine, the machine itself was
had to be ginormous.
Bigger than my house. It was literally, it wasn't as wide, but it was definitely as long as my house.
Wow.
Which is probably 30 something feet long. And it was high. It was probably is almost as high as my house, so it's probably 16, 18 feet tall. And for years he was able to put this glue on, and the fumes of it just went in the air. They just had fans that just blew it out the ceiling. Right. Again, this was in the 70s, 80s. Probably 80s more. But the EPA came in, and he had to buy a burner for this machine. And what it did was it took all those fumes and burnt them, and it made non-toxic chemicals out of it as it burned into the roof and filtered, whatever. But it cost them $2 or $3 million to upgrade that machine.
I was gonna say,
and he wasn't making any money whatsoever on it. You know what I mean? That upgrade did not give him any more material. All it did was stop polluting the atmosphere.
Took what he was making and strapped it down to a number, and it was stuck that way. Wow.
Right.
Where is it? Where are they located? They like multiple buildings still?
Yeah,
or is it like,
Always
are they
all
like
in the
like
same
a hub?
town. All in the same town.
Where is that?
Mount Prospect?
Yeah, Mount Prospect. You know where that is? It's up by, it's right by the airport.
Okay. Midway?
No, O'Hare.
O'Hare. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the name of the company? Is it like
Sun
last name or is it?
Sun Process.
I'm gonna look into it. Read
Yeah,
about it.
you
That's
should.
really interesting.
Yeah, we should meet up with them someday.
And that's something I never knew. I mean, obviously dating Katie for 3 years, I've heard a lot of stories. I've never even heard that story till now. So that's really awesome and interesting.
Yeah, he was a super nice guy. When I first started out doing woodworking, he was like my best customer because he had money to redo his house and redo stuff in his companies and stuff.
And he liked your work.
Well, of course he did.
Yeah.
But the point is that he gave me a chance without really knowing my work. Because you know what I mean? You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So I started doing some small stuff, and he really liked me too.
Yeah, he liked that you were innovative, and you know, if he had something, he's like, well, this is what I want, but I don't know how you would do that. You know, you'd be able to say, well, you know, this is how I would do it, and I think he liked that creative aspect.
I used to make a lot of fixtures for him. Do you know what a fixture is? Like if you're doing like 100 of the same thing, a fixture you would put your piece in, and you would be able to machine it all, and they would all be exactly the same.
Yeah, it's basically like a mold, but for machining.
Yeah, like a pattern holder, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, he would give me things like that to do. And then, but that was actually later on after I did his kitchen, which is kitchen. It was a kitchen and a utility room, and between the two of them, there was over 100 doors on those. So it was a big kitchen.
Wow.
And utility room. But that was one of the biggest, at the time it was the biggest project I ever did.
How long did you spend doing that? How long did it take you to do that?
A few months, I think. And I was doing it with basic hand tools too. Like I was doing with routers.
Yeah.
No, I didn't have
And it was
any,
probably, I'm assuming it was just you, and you didn't have a team. It was probably you and maybe one
I
or two
maybe
other
had
people?
I maybe had one person helping me.
Yeah, I can't remember it.
I can't remember, but if I had anybody, it was one person. Later on, I had like 3 or 4 people, part-timers that would help me, but no, he was a good guy, and he liked what I did, and we went on an awesome fishing trip one time, and he paid for all of it. We went to what lake is on Ohio?
Superior?
Huh?
Superior?
No,
It wasn't Lake Superior?
I don't think so. Anyways, it was a walleye excursion, and it was a bunch of guys. It was all his salesmen, some of his customers, good customers.
Yeah.
It was a guy's weekend.
Yeah.
And then Mary's dad went, and I got pictures of it somewhere. But it was awesome, just to be included. Being, I felt important enough to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To be included with all these really important business guys.
And I would say that's a different kind of, because you said millionaire, but that's a different kind of a millionaire. Like if you saw him walking down the street, or if you were with him, you probably would have, if you just met him, you'd have no idea, like, hey, this guy's got a lot of money.
No,
And
he
had class.
Yeah,
class, but no, you're right.
You wouldn't say, "Oh God, that guy's got to be a millionaire." You wouldn't say that, but you knew that he wasn't an average Joe.
No, he was I don't know if he even went to college, but
He
was
didn't go to college.
Yeah, he was very well educated. Though.
I think he went for
You
like
know what
one
I mean?
semester.
Yeah.
And
Even though he
hated
didn't go to
it.
college, he was really smart.
Yeah, and he, I'm sure, respected and valued what he had. That's the difference
That
versus work
exactly
versus
it.
that's the one thing I always say is I would love to be rich, but I would make it a point that if I were to ever come in, like work into lots of money, you have to respect and value what you have, no matter how much money you have, because obviously there's some wealthier people they don't respect or value because it's always been there. It's always,
Well, exactly.
and I think you should always value and respect what you have.
Right.
Right, because those other kind of people, they're the ones that just take advantage of it because it's always been there.
And it
they
feels
don't know
way
any
better
different.
to earn it. Feels way better to earn
Oh,
it. And
it's absolutely your self-esteem.
yeah,
You know, being able to create something, whether it be a little bench or a $1 million business.
yeah.
Without you, that wouldn't have been created. That's the bottom line. That's how you got to feel about things. And you will never have to take a drug or drink in your life to feel better about yourself. Once you realize that creating things is so self-fulfilling, so self-fulfilling that you don't need a drug or a drink to get that feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I do. I
Yeah.
create things, and I don't have to drink because I already feel good about myself because I know that without what I do, no one would be able, I'm not saying no one can do it, but no one would be doing it within my I don't know how to explain, but I mean, you could, like, I'm working on a plow or a bucket for that tractor. When I'm done, that's going to be the only one like it in the world. Because I'm not copying off of plans. I'm not taking plans and following A, B, and C. I'm making it up as I go along. So when I'm done and it works, I'm going to feel really, really good.
Yeah,
because I know I created something, one-of-a-kind thing.
Yeah, and if someone said, "Here you go, Dan. Here's this for your tractor. You can plow." You'd be like, "Okay, that's great. That's awesome. It made it easier, but I really don't care about it. Like you don't care."
Right.
And if you ask all those people that are wealthy and they're living on their yachts and they're living the fun lifestyle, if they tell you that they're personally happy, they're lying to you because there's no value in what you're living a
Most
great
of them
life.
are
but there's
miserable.
There's no personal worth or value that you feel or
Right.
giving.
Again, it's all about creating things.
Yeah. And respecting him.
Right.
That's a big thing. Covered a lot.
I know we did. It was good. Good conversation.
It's real conversations, a lot of conversations that don't take place anymore, and people don't sit down and have these kind of...
Right. Right. But no, this was nice. All right, let's end it here, and then we'll go in and have a dessert.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Hope you watched the whole thing. This is Dan McGee, Alex Rathje,
Rathje, there you go. Yeah.
Alex Rathje, and in the distance, behind the camera, is Mary McGee. And Coco the dog is here too, so talk to you later. Cheers. Mary cheered too, you just couldn't see her.